Welcome back, everyone. This is Shadow Drake. We're catching up to the patch. This is part 7, and I believe I have 2 more parts after this before we're actually caught up to where the harm suit gets released. So yeah, let's see what happens. So last time we got some potatoes. We got our first harvest. It actually lasted within the 50-minute video because I planted them at the beginning and they grew towards the end, so that puts it at roughly 40 to 50-minute growth cycle. So with that, we can see that the Vulcan Sun actually does help expedite the growth a bit. Now, what I show here is that there's only one way to check your hygiene, and that is entity state. I was curious to see how much it changed, and I waited for like about 2 minutes, and it only went up to by like 10%. You know, like 0.36 as you saw, and that went up to 10%. So I was like, ugh, that's really annoying. But after that, I just decided, well, it's not like that'll be a very useful thing. I don't really check it anymore after that. I just got curious because I kept, you know, I did these 4 recordings all at once. So I think this one is like, 2-3 hours in, and I was like, how long does it take? So I was curious. Alright, now that the potatoes are basically growing and we have 9 of them, hopefully by the end of this part we will have 27 of them. Now comes the fact that I need to finish creating the filtration system so that I can get oxygen out of the greenhouse. I need to create the storage system so that I can store the oxygen. And I also need to create a storage system for mixing fuels. As you see that everything is kind of starting to slowly come together. So it's just a matter of printing, laying out stuff, and working. But yeah. Now, as far as automating things, and we're going to get started on that, I think some of it will touch in this part, but the rest will touch on others. The greenhouse oxygen automation. That's going to be something where I have to carefully draw out enough oxygen from the greenhouse to go to my storage tank without making it unsuitable for living. Yeah, it's gonna be one of those things. And that's kind of a low priority, just because I could always just control it manually. Like, the biggest things I don't want to be constantly controlling will be the fuel mixing and the H2 combustor, so I have to make that stuff more automated. But yeah. I think I kept this blur because I was just waiting for the weather station to print. So I couldn't think of what else to do. So yeah, the weather station. I believe when I started this part, I was gonna go out mining, but then I realized I don't want to be caught out in a storm, and I don't have a weather station, so I might as well build one. Just one of the annoyances that you can run into in this game is that on an atmospheric world, you could decide, hey, I'm gonna go mining today, and then in the middle of mining, a storm hits, and suddenly you're having to crawl your way back home. Or if you do what I do most of the times, you forget to turn on your tracking beacon, and then basically somehow have to stumble your way back home before you die. Like Mars or Europa, that's probably not as bad. Vulcan and Venus, well, actually, Mars, it's not bad. Vulcan and Venus are, no, Vulcan and Europa are about the same, in that the atmosphere outside will kill you pretty quickly, but it's not horrible. You know, you got a little bit less time than Mars, but you still got time. Venus, however, just outright wants to kill you. If you make mistakes like that, and yeah, then you can quite easily get yourself killed in Venus. So you see, I got a ridiculous amount of stuff because one, I need iron for hydroponics. Uh, I might need steel. I'll need copper. I'll need gold. Yeah, it's just a lot of stuff. I think I might need. Oh yeah, and I'm finally making more electrum after that mistake where I created 8 grow lights. Blah. I'll eventually automate this. It's just low priority. What day is it? Sometimes it's hard to see on the video. It's day 16. Let's see. If I planted on theoretically day 8, day 9, 2, 3, 12 will be 9, 1, 2, 3, 15 should have been 27. Okay, so yeah, so ideally I should have been about 27 right now. So yeah, behind a bit. The only interesting thing about I do like that Vulcan. Vulcan is actually quite an interesting planet. Like, I enjoy it the most, not only for the looks of a black hole and the lava mountains that were added, you know, basically volcanoes and all that fun stuff. Vulcan just has such a wide range of temperature and atmosphere that it just kind of makes it one of the more interesting planets. Like, yes, it's hot and stuff, but I kind of would rate it at around Europa level of difficulty. Maybe a tiny bit harder. Because one of the things about that is, you know, even though there are no ices in Vulcan, the atmosphere can get hot enough for you to basically just pump in atmosphere into the furnace to smelt stuff for you. So that's a plus. That's a huge plus in my opinion. Additionally, kind of good and bad, the atmosphere has volatile, so any nitrous or oxygen that mixes with it, you know, fires. That kind of makes things interesting. I mean, Europa is purely cold oxygen, mind you, but you know that's like the different trade-off. Like in Europa, you can mine ices, but if you fill your furnace with European oxygen, you just add some volatiles, and then you just, you know, the furnace can get hot. Vulcan, you just use the atmosphere completely, and you can off gas from silver or gold or lead to get the furnace hotter. And then the seasons in Vulcan are, you know, they have such a huge swing. Again, you don't really see that until about day 60 or day 70, but at that point, the Vulcan black hole, sun, whatever you want to call it, black hole is actually more correct. It hovers around the horizon more than it actually rises. It really hurts solar panels. Now, I know that the solar update made it made them generate more power, so they're no longer capped at 500 watts, thankfully. I think I will actually eventually build them. Like, I originally wasn't going to bother building any solar panels whatsoever for this playthrough, and just run strictly off of Stirlings and power from cooling down H2 combustor water. But the more I think about it, like, the more I want to see just how much of a difference the power generation is between uh, Vulcan summer and Vulcan winter. And by that I mean Vulcan winter is when there's less daylight. You know, whatever that one is called. I think it's astronomical. It's not astrological. That I don't think that was it. There's a way. There terms, man. Terms. I really want to see if it's worthwhile. Because I think the last time I played this, way before the patch, you know, shortly after seasons happened, I remember barely getting any power from solar panels. And most of them just kept obstructing each other with shadows. You know, like, I had them in a weird diagonal way, but because the Vulcan black holes literally just raced across the horizon, it was nearly impossible for them to not throw shadows at each other. Like, you can barely even call it a sunrise and a sunset. Like, I think at some points I wonder if it was a perpetual sunrise that eventually decided, nah, it's a sunset. But, you know, at the time, they were capped to 500 watts. So, I really want to see just how much power we get around that point. Because if it averages out, actually, I don't think it'll average out, just because the horizon makes it really difficult. But I mean, if we get enough power to kind of offset the daytime power expenses, then that'll be good. So right here is the framework for where I'm going to put the Sterlings. I basically want to have a line of steel frames that I can just have the Sterlings go down that line. I don't remember exactly how many I needed. I know one is nowhere near enough to cool 2000 Celsius water and steam, H2 combustor mix, and then, you know, cool it all down within one night, at least a liter's worth. Because I need to be generating at least 2 liters of water every night. And I know one is not enough. I want to say it was either 4 or 6 of them. I do not remember the exact math, so I'm going to start off with 4. And if that still doesn't keep up and give me 2 liters of water at night, then I'll, you know, do more. But I wanted to say 4 was a good number, but I don't know how good. But yeah. Now the filtration, the O2 filtration, is going to be a part of the greenhouse stuff, because I do want it to auto, you know, I do want the greenhouse to control how much oxygen it has, and so I want that to be part of the greenhouse system. The mixing, the H2 combustor, the Stirling, that's going to be still part of the atmospherics. I do want to separate that specific part to something else. The only problem I have with that is that I think I might... I need to know how much volatiles are in the tanks, and that's part of the atmospherics. So I don't know. I'll figure it out. Combine it. One of the major issues that I believe I realized around the time that I you know, decided I need turbo volume pumps, is that those suckers can take out, you know, 1,000 watts at full power. I don't remember if it was in this part as I was doing this stuff that thought came to mind, or if it was when I was building them that I realized it. There's a point where I print out a bunch of heavy cables. That's around the time that I realized I need to do something about that. The reason that's a problem is because, I mean, you're aware, most of you might be aware, but if you're not aware, light cables will pop at 5,000 watts of power being used in the line. Having 3 turbo volume pumps that could potentially all be running at the same time, you know, to draw 3 kilowatts total, plus a large power vent that will run at night. That's another 500 watts. Plus any filtration volume pumps being 200 watts each. And I'm probably going to end up having, like, by nature, 2, 4, maybe 6. You know, that's another 1200 watts. If you add that up, 3 kilowatts, 500 watts, 1.2 kilowatts, that's 4.7 kilowatts. That's, dangerously close to popping a light cable, and I don't want to pop the light cables. So that's around the time that I have to completely redo the wiring for the atmospheric system. I probably could have done it right. I should have done it right, where I should have had a heavy cable line and do that, but I think in the interest of time, I needed to get it up and running, and heavy cables print slow. They really do print quite slow. Maybe if I had planned things out a little bit better, or wasn't in such a crazy rush, I probably would have had enough heavy cables to do it properly the first time. And that's kind of both the draw of Stationeers and also the enemy at the same time. It's really easy to accidentally overbuild. At the same point, it's also really easy to accidentally under-engineer your builds. Like, you have to have some level of foresight, but at the same point, it's not like you're punished for not having that foresight. Did I not actually... I somehow missed this. I actually can't believe I forgot this part right here. Or did I do something else here? No, I completely forgot to remove this part. Wow, okay, sorry for the 20 seconds of time, you know, staring at a door. Anyways. I lost my train of thought. Oh, right. Over-engineering and under-engineering. See, you do build experience in this game the more you make mistakes. You know, and you can under-engineer and over-engineer stuff. You're not really punished heavily for always under-engineering stuff. But, you know, the main point is that, you know, let's just say filling up your O2 tank. The issue I kept having early on is that I will always fill my O2 tank. You know, I'll build a filtration, I'll pump oxygen into it, but then the things that I will always forget to do is add a back pressure regulator, and you can probably guess where this is going. So then I start that system, fully knowing that I didn't build this safety, mind you. Most of the times I'm building without the safeties. It's not good practice, but... So I don't build the safeties. I know fully well that I have to shut it off before I leave it alone. You know, like the intent was I'll start doing this, and then I'll come back and I'll shut it off when before I leave it alone. And yeah, that works for a time. But then you get lazy. You're like, okay, well, you know, it's a 5 megapascals for this portable tank, and it's barely filling at like 1 kilopascals a second. So, you know, I got some time. I can go and print out some stuff, get some stuff ready, then come back and shut it off. So then you start doing that. you start doing stuff like that. And then eventually it comes to the point where it's like you start doing that and you realize, oh, I need some iron to print something. I'll be right back. I'll go on a mining trip. And then eventually you leave for a full-blown mining trip, and then you come back to a crater where your base was supposed to be. Stuff like that. And so you see, that's kind of the the under-engineered system. Like, it works, but it's completely reliant on you to ensure that it doesn't explode or anything. Whereas if I had just taken the time to put a back pressure regulator and then put a passive vent to, I don't know, outside, because usually my bases were pressurized to 100 kPa at that time. You know, put a back pressure regulator. Actually, no, I would have put it in the base because I've always dropped oxides and then pressurize, to take out oxygen from the base. But anyways, if I put a back pressure regulator on that tank to the end of the base and just set that to like a nice 9 megapascals or something like that, I never would have come back to a crater. In that case, that would have been essentially perfectly engineered for your purposes. You can run the filtration and keep your portable tank going. And then, if you ever forgot that you left it running, you won't come back to a crater. Stuff like that. Like, I've taken a lot of shortcuts in this game. Like, I engineered enough to get the system working, and the only safety measures are my own interventions, things that I know I should do. Like, and it's bitten me a lot of times. Many times. My cat is having a field day with stuff. But to go back to my point, you're not really heavily punished for under-engineering your system. The punishments happen from negligence on your parts. Like, even on an over-engineered system, like over-engineered would have been some crazy automation where it's like, never turn on back pressure regulators or filters or active vents or anything like that. And just like any sort of crazy condition happens, you shut a lot of things down. Or like, maybe it's like, oh hey, it would have been a filter that controls an active vent that controls a back pressure regulator that also watches the base pressure to make sure that it doesn't go above 100 kPa before it just turns on the powered vent to just throw out everything outside. Or a crazy system. Like, see, the thing is, you can start small. You can start with the basic functional system and then improve it as you realize you have issues. Like, if all you needed to do was to add oxygen to a portable tank, you would just need the filter. The vents, the connectors, whatever. And then you get it working. You turn it on, you get your filter in, you turn it on, you get your Atmos tablet, and you just verify that you're getting the right stuff in the right place, and then you just feel good about yourself, and you're done with that. And it works. And then as you look into it more, you realize, this is stupid slow. Why is this so slow? I'm feeling this thing like 20 pascals a second. Like, this will take forever to get the air I need. So then you go back to that system and you look into ways to improve it. So you're like, okay, ways to make this filter faster. I could filter faster by emptying out the output. Okay, so then you decide to add a volume pump from the output of the filter to the portable tank. So then you start to look at that. Sorry, I had to unplug my phone. I don't know if it caught that. So then you start filtering better. And then you do what I did. You accidentally leave the system going on, and you come back to a crater. And you're like, what exploded? So if you reload the save and then you come right back and try to figure out what exploded, you see that the portable tank, once it hit over, 10 megapascals of pressure, it explodes. And you're like, oh, that exploded. Now how do I stop this? So then you go back to your system. You're like, okay, well, how am I going to get this to stop? The simplest solution is install a back pressure regulator. So you're like, okay, I just need a back pressure regulator at the portable tank and set it to some number so it won't overpressurize. So then you do that. You have your assembly, you're filtering out your oxygen, you're safe, you're happy, you leave, you come back, and you notice that the walls are blown out of the base. And you're like, why did the walls blow out of my base? So you once again reload, go back, and you walk into your base to see what happened, and you notice that the interior of your base is like 200 kilopascals of pressure and climbing. And you're like, whoa, what is going on here? And then you realize that you put your back pressure regulator into your base because you didn't want to waste that oxygen, which makes sense. So then you're like, oh, well, how do I fix this? And it just you go through iterations through your own mistakes and errors. That's really what I like about this game, in the sense that the errors you make are from either you not knowing how something works, or you creating a hazard that you were not aware of, and once the hazard happens, then you now know how it exists, and you can start to look for ways to prevent that hazard from happening. Some of them are very simple to fix, like the overpressurized Mark II portable cannon tank. Blech. Overpressurized portable tank. You could just install a back pressure regulator while it's on a connector, and it's good. Other things are really kind of nebulous as to when they happen, and it happened because of something. Sometimes it's just not apparent. Like, I see on the Discord quite a bit, or sometimes even Reddit, where people post a picture of their basically destroyed base, and I'm not mocking or faulting. Let's just get that straight. I'm not mocking or faulting. I know this is purely from inexperience because they don't know what happened. They really truly don't know. But they look at a row of broken pipes and stuff, and they wonder, why did the pipe break? I have, the pressure is 2 megapascals, so there's no way they should have broken. There are no pollutants or anything, so nothing should have condensed, and yet I have broken pipes. What broke the pipes? And that is a logical conclusion. Their pipes broke. Why did they break? As far as I know, it has to be over 60 megapascals of pressure for them to break. Or you need the liquids to break, or the gases need to freeze to break. They may have made all of those conclusions. But the thing that they don't know, that they wouldn't know unless you're purposely testing for this, is if you have a row of broken pipes, something exploded and took those pipes out. And that's not something that's quite readily apparent. Because they may not know yet that if a pipe bursts because of pressure or liquids or freezing, only a single pipe breaks. You don't have more than one pipe break. Only a single one breaks out of the entire network. And so screenshots where people post and you have a row of pipes broken, from the experience that I have seen, trial and error, other experiences and stuff, I know that broke because of an explosion, which means either a canister exploded near there, a portable canister exploded, demolition charges, your furnace, stuff like that. Something around that area broke and exploded and took out all those pipes. But if you're new, you don't necessarily know that that's what to look for. So then once you're made aware that that's what happens, then it's like, okay, reload. What in this area exploded? And then you look around that area and you come to find out that green little liquid nitrogen canister was right there. Problem solved. I'm sorry.
Oxygen low.
And that's kind of where a lot of the errors and the trouble troubleshooting and the problem solving in Stationeer comes from. Like, yeah, if you've been watching this a while, you probably know this. But if this is kind of your first series, because more recent, they're, more recent series, then you probably wouldn't know that. And with all of that experience, I'm extremely unlikely to make those mistakes. Doesn't mean that I don't make them. I still make them from time to time, but I'm just very unlikely to make them. And so because of that, most of my systems tend to be under-engineered. Like a good case example would be that phase change heat pump system. You notice that I have absolutely zero condensation valves and no purge valves, and between the two phase change devices and the counterflows. And the reason for that is because I don't need them. That's not to say that I'm being egotistical, just saying, oh, I downright don't need them. It comes more from the fact that I've messed with those systems enough and try to get an understanding of what will be safe and what would be unsafe, so that I could make sure I don't need the condensation valves or the purge valves, so that I can have a working system that doesn't rely on them. Now, is it technically safe? It's debatable, because I can come up with several situations where my system will break. But the odds of that happening are low enough that I didn't really want to justify the safety. So, I didn't want to over-engineer it in that regard. If that situation would have happened, then yes, the condensation valves, the purge valves, that stuff would probably have been crucial to saving the heat pump system. But on the other side of the things, the other side of the coin, is it necessary? And that's basically debatable. It's not great practice. I will admit that it's not great practice to do it that way. I mean, I am saving what, 200 watt, maybe 100 watts of power, inconsequential amount of resources to do that in piping. And in the real world, I would be absolutely wrong for doing it that way. I would never make a system without those safeties. It's just a lawsuit waiting to happen. like no joke, it is a lawsuit waiting to happen. Like, I fully acknowledge that I've made those trade-offs for a different purpose. I'd never make systems like that for sure in real life. In the context of the game, though, I don't know. I think what would be more amusing in the context of the game is if that system fails from, things are too hot or anything like that. That would be a pretty good, hilarious haha moment, in the sense of, how did you let that happen? Like, for real, the only way that phase change heat pump system will fail is if either the CO2 gets hotter than 150 Celsius, or the volatiles does the same thing, or miraculously the CO2 gets below negative 100 Celsius. You know, there's only two ways that system could fail. It either got too hot, that it's impossible to have liquid pollutants, or it got too cold that they froze. And it really does, for at least for me, for a gameplay perspective, it will be one of those, how did you let that happen? How did you do that? At which point I will go, I don't know, I need to debug my system. I gotta figure out what in the world happened. Yeah, I'm just checking that. Speaking of which, I'm checking that to see how the temps are doing. Because recall, I'm trying to fill up the volatiles tank to 30 megapascals, or over 30 megapascals, and the CO2 tank as well. It's gonna take forever for that. Ugh. Anyways, long story short, with this game, you can definitely over-engineer your systems, get them all working 100% safe. Honestly, that's the goal for multiplayer setting. In a single-player setting, you're really just working against yourself. You know, you gotta engineer it to the point that you won't do something stupid. Sometimes it's not worth. Sometimes it's worth skipping the safety measures that you would normally never ever think would be a problem. Other times, you just have to do it because you just know that you will always forget. Look at that. 27 potatoes, day 17. And I think that one plant was slow to grow, which is weird. Genetically wise, I probably would not want that plant to keep growing because... Ugh. Now, did I cut this out? I don't know. I'm questioning myself now. I thought I cut out all of it. Yep, I cut this one out. Good. But yeah, you can over-engineer your systems and you can under-engineer the systems. The problem with under-engineering them is it doesn't work. It doesn't work like you'd expect it to. Yeah, I've been playing this game since Phase Change, so it's been at least a year. So there's a lot of ways that I know, I built a lot of that knowledge, and then, there's still also a lot of tribal knowledge to understand about this game. So I built a lot of knowledge for how to get my stuff working and how I can visualize on having a working system. If you're starting fresh, I mean, you may be seeing what I am doing, and it might be absolutely baffling to you as to why I do it this way. I mean, just this whole playthrough completely, I decided to go for the Tech 2 printers first. For, good or bad. And as far as things go, it seems to be working out. But again, I was a little delayed. So day 19, is that what it says? Day 19, day 18? I can't tell. From a distance, I can't tell. Yeah. Day 18. Day 18. So day 18, I have 27 potato plants growing. So this is a hallmark achievement in the sense that I will never run out of oxygen from this point onward. I will always have the ability to make oxygen to breathe. And, woohoo! Congratulations, party icons. I will still be in the danger of water. But it is good to be at this point because, the whole stress of the playthrough, this is a good point. This is a good point to be in because now I'm more confident that this is possible. Or I didn't make a horrible mistake in what I did. I have 8.9 liters of water. That's still scarily low. I don't want to get below 6 liters of water because then that, just think of it kind of like a stat. Like, okay, when I started making my own water reliably, was I at, how much did I dip into the plant water before I made it? And my personal goal was to hopefully never get below 6 liters. I'm not going to spoil how low I get, but, just seeing this, I mean, you can see that now I'm getting the fuel mixing part ready. So the H2 combustor is there. I don't have the pumps, obviously. I don't have the pumps to get in there. I don't have a fuel mixing system yet, but it's in progress. I have a fuel tank ready. I have the insulated pipes going to the fuel system in progress. I have the output for the H2 combustor in progress. Everything's in progress. But we are making slow steps towards it. The constant annoyance of the hygiene is definitely something that slowed me down greatly. Because again, I try to play without health damage from hunger or thirst, which I took like maybe a half second of health damage because I barely got inside to drink in time. And I've gone red hygiene, what, 3 times? Maybe 4 times? I lost count. And this is strict, very strict limitations. But I'm doing it. Oh, and the other thing is, I did not want to do any sort of sleeper. It's not really a cheese. I didn't want to extend my time using a sleeper. So, you know, as far as this run goes, things are going well. Now is where I can say things are going well. If there was any sort of comedic justice that, something would have exploded near me. I don't think I get a script out in this part. I think it's the next part where I go crazy. I want to say this part and the next one is more about getting all this infrastructure ready and in place. Then I'll go script heavy later. And as before, I'll do the same stuff. I don't think this oxygen filtration is anything more special than I think it's basically a copy from the volatiles filter, with the exception that I don't have an output pump because it's going to the greenhouse. How the oxygen filtration is going to work, in the greenhouse will be an active vent. That active vent is going to push greenhouse air into the input pipe for this filter. This filter, in turn, as soon as it sees anything on the input, will turn on and filter out the filter out that air. Get the oxygen into the tank and push the CO2 and nitrogen back into the greenhouse. Once I can get to nitrogen. And so it isn't that in depth. It's just that. It's just going to control its own Did I fix that? Hold on. Now that I'm looking back at this, did I fix that? Okay, it looks like I did. Okay, good. Because I just realized that I was trying to tell it not to filter if it was below 2000. And I just basically needed to filter when it's anything on the input. Okay, so I did fix it, got it. So, yeah, different things. Yeah. Oh boy, I got 16 moles of oxygen. Woohoo. Progress. Ah, yeah. This is around the time that I start trying to figure out how am I going to fix this, because I dug myself in the hole here. I got the light cables literally everywhere, but I need heavy cables. I need heavy cables to go to the turbo pumps and the power vents. So yeah, that's basically what that's about. I think the next part is where I absolutely fix everything. And so yeah, the back with the whole under engineer, over engineer, and the foresight. So you see, like that's where the foresight can sometimes come into play. Like if I had, like, I knew I was gonna do this system like this eventually, and yet when I originally started this system and was working on it, I completely forgot about the fact that I needed space for a transformer and heavy cables. Like, if I had remembered that, I probably wouldn't be doing this part right here. But since I didn't remember it, that means now I have to do everything I can to fix that. I think I was checking to make sure that I didn't short anything out. There. Then I decided that, well, I can just break that connection because there's no reason for it, you know? And everything's technically corrected. Well, minus the fact that I need the, get the heavy cables in place. I was actually trying to get that one in place quickly because I need my cooling system to always work at night. Can't just not have it open, I mean working. Then I realized, well, oh boy, I have these things in the worst place possible. I realized just how much heavy cables I need to run. Because those Sterlings are going to go and charge my station batteries. You know, there's no reason for them to go anywhere else. So the Sterlings need to go charge the station batteries. These turbo volume pumps need to go back to that the atmospheric station battery. So that's what I did. I haven't really done very many parts past this. I've actually been a bit behind as far as getting the content ready and going. But I want to say that heavy cable being ran there is going to cause an issue eventually for me. Because I do need to expand and put another cooling tower to assist with the heat load. One is enough. You know, the surprising thing, like when I first made that system, I way over engineered it. I put 4 cooling towers. So, you know, I did the 4 cooling towers to cool down a very large insulated tank of... Oh, okay, so this is where that happened, where I realized, why are these things dark deficient? I think it's from where I planted them. Something went haywire on that. So, what was I saying? So yeah, when I first created it, I way over engineered it. And it's or I way upsized it for what I needed. Um, Originally it was, you know, I had 4 cooling towers to a large powered to one large insulated tank of volatiles. You know, the large one. And you know, because pollutants condense. So basically, that large volatiles tank got to it was about 130, 140 Celsius, which was actually pretty difficult to work with in as far as phase change goes. I want to say it's dark deficient because of when I planted those. I think if I left them alone for another day, they would have been fine, but I'm not sure. I just needed to fix them to make sure that they stop dying or stop being unhappy. Anyways, so because of that, I thought I needed a lot of cooling. So I had, four to six cooling towers. I went crazy with them. And then they're no longer darkness deficient. That confused me. I was like, so, okay. I don't know. I guess I had really just planted them in a weird season, and that's what they were. That was their problem. And this was a time where the only heat load in the base was basically just my living quarters. So I wasn't making water, I wasn't trying to cool down anything else, I was just trying to keep the interior cool. So all I had was a simple pollutant phase change heat pump system that tried to get the interior down to 20 Celsius. So at the time I thought that the system was going to be overwhelmed, so I needed the 4 cooling towers. Well, once, next time I checked on it, after a long time, I realized that, the large volatiles tank was already at about 100 Celsius and still dropping, like, it would only have gone to about 80 Celsius at most, at the lowest. But then, it just went to highlight that if the only heat load was my interior, the interior, the printers and stuff, and that wasn't really a lot of thermal energy being created. I built 4 cooling towers. It was excessive. For what I had, it was excessive. Later on, when I finally got to the H2 combustor, making my own water and stuff, it was still excessive. This was before I learned how to work with Stirlings. So I cooled everything with the cooling system. At that point, the system was capable of handling that load. It was still kind of excessive, though. It wasn't until I decided, okay, I need to start making liquid volatiles and liquid oxygen and liquid everything. Once I started getting to that point, then I actually saw the system itself tick up in temperatures. The 4 cooling towers, it finally could no longer handle that heat load, and it was creeping up to, I don't remember what the numbers were. It got to 110 Celsius at one point, and then it just slowed down and kind of just stopped. And so it took that until about that long for the system to kind of finally be overwhelmed to a degree. And that's kind of one of the mistakes. It's not a bad mistake. One of the mistakes you can make in this game. I mean, I say mistake, quote mistake. I spend the resources and time to get something that is way overkill for what is needed. If I had just gotten a single cooling tower, yes, my volatiles tank was 140 Celsius. That's very concerning. I don't want it to get above 150, Past that initial panic, one cooling tower would have taken forever, but it would have eventually gotten it to below 120 if I had just let it sit going. I could have spent the time and the resources for making the other 3 cooling towers into something else. But yeah. Oh, this is a good time to stop. This is Shadow Drake. Thank you for watching as I ramble on about engineering my systems and the safeties I ignore. We will continue on. Next part, we'll start automating some stuff. Hope to see you then. Thank you, and have a good day. Goodbye.